All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. I'm 13 WMAZ meteorologist Alex Forbes. We are tracking the latest here on what is now Tropical Storm Ian. This was a Category 4 hurricane, made landfall yesterday, not too far away from Fort Myers near Cape Coral. That whole region, not a good situation down there. Obviously, we saw a ton of damage in that area, not only from the wind, but from the storm surge down there. It was not a good situation at all. Let's get a look at what's going on right now. We do have the tropical storm rolling off the coast as we speak. So this is the loop here over the past few hours or so. In fact, this is going to go back to yesterday. Here it is making landfall. This was just outside of Fort Myers, and it's now continuing to move towards the north and then now off of the coast there. But let me pause this real fast and show you kind of what happened, and I'll take this full screen. So this was yesterday afternoon about 2:30. It officially came on shore about 3. This right here was the eye wall, right in here. All of this red and orange. And, you know, we look at this on a radar all the time. We see red and orange on a radar all the time. But what you don't see in this picture is this is the spot right here where 155-mile-an-hour winds occurred. So, right, so you got Port Charlotte up here, Charlotte Harbor. Here's Fort Myers. You go down towards the Everglades down here. That whole area, in fact, if I measure this across, it's going to be about 70 miles worth of area. You know, you track this inland kind of like this, right? It's going to be, you know, this part of the coast that saw that. And it's going to be this part of the coast here, right in this area, that is seen significant damage. Now, how does this compare to Charlie down there? Charlie was, you know, much smaller, much like that. So we're talking about a much bigger area involved in terms of the damage. So let's take a look at what's going on right now. The center looks like it is almost completely reemerged. Let's see if we can find it here. Not quite. We do have numerous flash flood warnings in effect down here. This is going to be, you know, for the next little while, a couple flash flood emergencies as well. In fact, I know this one that includes Volusia County is a flash flood emergency. Let me hop in the comments here and see what we're talking about. Let's see if, I know we couldn't get on Facebook yesterday. Let's see if we're there today. Not quite. But, you know, we're going to continue to watch this as it moves off and into the Atlantic. Okay, so let's talk about what's going on right now. Here in central Georgia, we have a wind advisory today. And the reason for this is because as Ian moves north, it's running into high pressure. And essentially what happens is, you know, high pressure up here, you got Ian down here, they're coming together. And what happens is air is funneled through those two spots, and that's what we're getting here over central Georgia. Gusts to 35 miles an hour today. That's going to be for all of central Georgia, running until 8 p.m. tonight, this wind advisory. I suspect we'll see another one tomorrow because we're going to be looking at windy conditions from now until then. The update to the path from at least this time yesterday excuse me, is that it is forecasted, Ian is forecasted to go, actually this has changed just a little bit. It looks like they've dragged it back west just a little bit. Very close to Charleston, it looks like, tomorrow afternoon at about 70-mile-an-hour wind speed. So even though here in central Georgia we are not in the cone, right, the cone of uncertainty, we are still going to feel the impacts from Ian. In fact, when the National Weather Service that's up in Atlanta, that's responsible for our area, sent out their update this morning, they sent out an email update whenever we're going through events like this, they put in red, bold text, we are still expecting impacts, namely in east central Georgia. Rainfall is still possible, and it's something that they're concerned about in the days ahead. So we'll go through the details on that here in just a moment, but also talking about the coast. You know, the Georgia coast is beginning to be impacted. The National Hurricane Center is forecasting 4 to 6 feet of storm surge, potentially on St. Simons and on Cumberland Island, also 2 to 3 feet from Sapelo Island up to Tybee. That will go up into South Carolina as well, but that is the forecast. Okay. Let's talk about potential impacts. So it is possible that we get through this event with no rain here in central Georgia. It is also possible that we get through this event with 2 to 3 inches of rain in our eastern counties. We are going to be right on the edge, and that's kind of what the GFS is showing you here. Let me just roll this chair out of the way. It'd be better if I can just point at the screen. Okay, there it goes. So what we've got going on here, this is Friday at 5 p.m. The GFS is pretty much in lockstep with the Hurricane Center in terms of where the location of the storm is going to be. But we're still catching the rainfall here in central Georgia. If I turn this over to the European model, you'll see it's actually kind of the same. Notice it, so the European model is bringing the storm in, this white line here, just a little further south. And if obviously we're catching the rain right there. If I play this forward just a little bit, we still get a little bit of rain. So are we in the clear from the storm? No. It is possible that it's raining, with 40-mile-an-hour winds Friday at 9 p.m. Even though the center of the storm is up here in South Carolina, we're still looking at a wind field that is much larger than that. Because this was a Category 4 hurricane, it built up a lot of energy, and what happens is it's got to get that energy out of there, and it does that by spinning the wind out. So what we're talking about today is borderline tropical storm force wind gusts. We could see wind gusts up to 35 miles an hour, 37 in Albany. Once you get these purples in here, that's when you get to 40. Play this forward a little bit. That's going to be possible through the day. Then, tomorrow morning, that says 26 here in Macon, but look, we've got, these purples out here. That's where 40, 50 is. We're also getting purples in parts of central Georgia. So even though that's not located right over Macon, so we're not seeing that number at 40, we are still seeing the possibility of that tomorrow morning. And then it begins to work its way out as we get into Saturday morning, right? So the center of the storm would be up here, closer to Charlotte. The wind gusts begin to die down. That's according to the GFS. Let's talk about the European model. Much of the same. So we play this forward through the morning hours. Notice we get these purples down in here. That would be 40-mile-an-hour wind gusts. South of Macon, so we would be talking about Hawkinsville, potentially Eastman, Dublin, Johnson County, Treutlen County through the day today. That's all. The wind is being spun around the hurricane, right? We've got, or the tropical storm, excuse me. We've got high pressure up towards the north, the tropical storm here, and the winds are being funneled through right like that, and that is that's what we're seeing. So roll this into tonight, winds begin to die down. Tomorrow morning, heating of the day, we get a little more energy, right? We still see it kind of pulse up here, kind of the same spot that the GFS was showing in terms of 40-mile-an-hour winds. Even higher down towards the coast, right, at this point. So we were talking about storm surge just a second ago. The storm surge is happening because the storm is down here. It's pushing winds on shore like that. Well, at this point, the winds would be coming like this, right, from the west, and it would push the water back out. So that's the good news down along the Georgia coast. So yeah, you get water in there, but you also get it pushed out. What else? Let's talk about rainfall. So we are right on the edge, right? Here we are in Macon. Here's central Georgia. It's possible that we get 6 inches of rain in Savannah and nothing in Macon. That is entirely possible. It's also possible that this shifts west a little bit, shifts east a little bit. If I had to put money on something, maybe it shifts east a little bit because the general trend has been for the forecast to shift east, but we're running out of time for things to shift east, right? It's possible that it's raining tonight in these spots. So that's the European model. The GFS shifts it east, right? It shows nothing in Macon, but it shows 2.5 inches of rain in Augusta. So it's a question of where that gradient sets up, and if that gradient comes over that Hancock, Washington, Treutlen County line. It's going to be very fine and impactful in terms of what happens to the forecast. So key takeaways here in central Georgia is that wind is our concern. Wind today and tomorrow, gusts to 45 miles an hour. You think about the summertime storms we get here. We occasionally get storms that gust to 45, 50, 60. We get 1 or 2 down trees. Those gusts happen in very specific locations. Now, what's going to happen over the next 12 to 24 hours is we're going to get these gusts all across central Georgia and for a long period of time. So the power outage chances are lower from what I was talking about yesterday morning, but not zero. And kind of like what I alluded to earlier, when we were talking with the National Weather Service, they said in their email update this morning, which we get whenever we're going through an event like this, in red bold text that's still here in central Georgia, specifically east central Georgia, we are looking at an event with significant impact to the power grid because we've got a ton of pine trees. They fall over on power lines. You're done. You lose the power line. It's got to be replaced. And you compact that with everything that's going on in Florida, all the power crews and everything that's going on down there. The resources, we're not sure, what exactly is going on in these spots in terms of what's in central Georgia, what's down in Florida. and what we would have to be able to restore power in a few spots. So the rain, again, we're going to be right on the edge of it. If I had to put money on something, it would be that the rain is going to be in our eastern counties, if at all. The National Weather Service still putting an inch or two of rain in our far eastern counties. So we'll have to see how that takes shape in the coming days. We're also technically in a risk of flash flooding if that were to happen. They do have us drawn into that risk, at least our eastern counties, and we'll have to just see how that takes shape here over the next few hours and see if that's something that ends up happening. But if I look at the storm now and look at the structure of it and kind of like draw out the track in my head, right? So like if we look at the radar and we say, okay, so the cone has something like that. If I were to take this entire rain shield and move it right along that line, it would clip our counties. Now, that's if the amount of moisture in the storm stays the same. That's if it goes in, just as the cone is saying, right over the Charleston area. But, you know, it's going to have to be a wait and see type thing. In the meantime, today, it's going to be windy in central Georgia. We're going to see some clouds. You can see that very defined line. Yesterday, that line was over Macon. It was actually kind of neat. I was driving, I was going through the 1675 interchange from 16 west to 75 north, and I could see the very defined white line in the sky. That was the farthest northern extent of the cloud deck there. And then to the west and to the south, it was all cloudy. To the north, it was all clear. So it was really interesting to see, but it's going to be somewhat similar today. Let me see. I cannot get any of the links to work. So if you're asking questions, I'm sorry, I can't see them at the moment. But that's pretty much what we've got going on here in central Georgia. Let's pop up some live cams and take a look at what's going on across the area. So this is Amelia Island. Notice they've got the hurricane flag flying right there. So if you're familiar with Florida, this is the furthest north island in Florida. You go a mile or two north of here, you're in Georgia. You are right on the coast of Cumberland Island, then St. Simons. So this is Amelia Island. This is overlooking the intercoastal waterway. So the ocean is on the other side of the island. If you've ever been there, this is where you go out on the dolphin tours and all of that. Downtown Fernandina Beach is this way. So we're seeing the white caps there on the intercoastal. If I flip this over to St. Augustine, we've got a camera down there. And you'll see waves crashing over the seawall. If you're familiar with St. Augustine, this is going to be the St. Johns County Pier. This is from the Embassy Suite. So there's the pier there. Look at that wave crashing over. This is the seawall. So this is storm surge beginning to come into St. Augustine now. Obviously, some emergency crews responding. Maybe somebody went out there on the pier. So this is the Embassy Suites. This is St. Augustine Beach. So this is, if you're again, familiar with that, this is going to be right up against the state park right there. So as you're coming around from St. Augustine and you make that right into St. Augustine Beach, it's right there. And this is where we're seeing the water come over the seawall here. And watch, this wave's about to hit. And yep, sure enough, look at that. Wow. So storm surge now in St. Augustine. Let's see what else we've got. We had Jacksonville Beach, and that is since gone. No. Don't know what happened to that camera. It probably lost power. Let's see if I can go further down the coast. We have also lost Daytona Beach, it looks like. Port Canaveral, lost that. So it looks like, do we have downtown Jacksonville? We do. Okay, so we've got downtown Jacksonville. So this is going to be up from St. Augustine a ways. Obviously very windy. If you're familiar with Jacksonville, again, this is looking towards downtown. So, you know, the Georgia-Florida game is played just across the river over there. The Jaguars Stadium. Downtown, obviously, over here. This is as you cross going over into St. John's. Obviously, you know, we were watching this camera this morning, and it was windy, very windy. Saw some rain, and you know, Jacksonville right now is on the farthest north extent of the storm. It's been raining on and off, but right, you cross into St. Mary's, you cross the Georgia state line, and you get out of the rain, at least as of right now. The storm's got to keep moving towards the north to get the rain to really fill in here. So it has been much worse this morning in St. Johns County, down into you know, Volusia County, down into Flagler County. So this is Flagler, Volusia here. a steady rain. The center is coming offshore just right here. So this is all to the north of it. It's actually mostly dry down to the south of the center now, and that's typically what we see with these tropical conditions, right? You go down towards Melbourne, almost completely dry. They'll get some rain as the storm moves away, but almost completely dry right now. So we'll have to see how that goes. Is worth noting, so down there in Volusia County, we are getting flash flood emergencies. New Smyrna Beach, Daytona Beach, Ponce Inlet, flash flood emergency, 10 to 14 inches of rain. In fact, that's something I haven't looked at yet. Wait until you see how much rain has fallen over the past 24 hours. If it wants to load. Watch that. Wow. Let me take the loop off of that, and you'll see, so this white here, anytime you get white, that's over a foot of rain. So from north of Fort Myers, just south of I-4, which runs from Tampa to Orlando up to Daytona Beach, that swath over a foot of rain, that is a ton of water. So you take that and you combine it with the storm surge in Fort Myers, you combine it with the storm surge that's going on in Daytona Beach right now, right? So they're in a flash flood emergency because they've seen over a foot of rain. Storm centered here near Cape Canaveral, and it's getting the onshore flow there into Volusia County. So that's why they're under a flash flood emergency there. Again, not a great situation. Ian is going to go down as one of the worst storms in the United States. It is going to be one of the strongest. There's only a handful of hurricanes that have made landfall as a Category 5. This one was technically a Category 4 at landfall, but it missed it by 2 miles per hour. It's possible that the National Hurricane Center goes back and surveys the damage that happened in and around Sanibel Island, Fort Myers, that whole area, and upgrades it to a 5, but as of now it was a 4. And it's just not a great situation. So here in central Georgia, again, though, we are looking at the wind gusts over the next few days, not just today, over today, tomorrow, and for the first part of Saturday because of the pressure gradient. Rain remains to be seen. Again, we keep seeing it shift east and then west. Yesterday it was out of the area. Today it's kind of back in. We'll just have to see how it shapes up. Power outage chances are lower from what I was talking about yesterday morning, but they're still not zero here in central Georgia. And it's still a significant enough threat, as to what I alluded earlier, to not let your guard down. I would say here in central Georgia, if you're going to be here for the next few days, prepare to be without power for a few hours. That is a very real possibility through the next few days. You think about summertime, you think about the summertime storms we get. We get a gust of 40, 50, 60 miles per hour. It knocks over a tree. It knocks over a tree onto power lines. It knocks over a power pole in a few instances. And we're going to be seeing those types of wind gusts over the next few days, not just hours, but few days here in central Georgia. If there weren't a tropical storm coming through and we had 45-mile-an-hour wind gusts, we'd be talking about this like, hey, hello, yeah, we got wind. It's not something that you just brush aside because Florida makes this look like nothing. It's still going to be impactful to us here in central Georgia, especially in east central Georgia, as we were looking at the wind models there. So I'm getting some questions now. So I have remnants there in Orlando, some flooding but manageable. Gust to 26 in South Carolina right now. Could the storm curve to central Georgia? It doesn't look like it. Not seeing that on the models, but we still will get wind and rain from it. Orlando, it's beginning to move out of Orlando, seeing the rain come to the end very shortly there. If the hurricane could strengthen, it could turn into a Cat 1 before coming into South Carolina. That is true. So if we're looking at the track of this, the update has landfall potentially just south of Charleston Friday afternoon, so tomorrow afternoon, as a 70-mile-an-hour tropical storm. That's 4 miles per hour away from hurricane status there. So yes, it is possible. North Carolina could see a lot of rain out of this. That is a possibility as well. Yes, so North Carolina watching for the possibility of rain there. But again, back here in central Georgia, we're going to be talking about potentially some rain in our eastern counties, a little bit of wind, or actually a lot of bit of wind, 45-mile-an-hour wind gusts today, tomorrow, and early Saturday. So and something that I've seen a lot of the past few days that I think is worth talking about is people are saying, oh, we're out of the cone. Well, yes, we are out of the cone. We're out of the path for the center of the storm, but the wind field around the center of the storm is already in southern Georgia, because the wind field is very big. So you move that wind field along with the cone, and we are still in the wind field. We are still going to see those tropical storm force wind gusts here in central Georgia. That is still very much a possibility. So I think that's just about it. That's pretty much what's going on right now. Obviously, the pictures out of Florida are it's just mind-boggling. Some of the stuff I saw, the Sanibel Causeway completely washed out. Fort Myers had almost 12 feet of water in it. Yeah, it's just Southwest Florida is going to be going through it. So we do have information on 13wmaz.com if you want to help out. There's a web story up about the Florida recovery. They've already got it set up down there. They've got a tie-in with the local agencies. So if you're looking for that, go over to 13wmaz.com. You'll see it there on the homepage. But it's going to be a while to recover down there in Florida. That storm was a monster. And it's interesting to note. So I know a fair amount of storm chasers, several people who were down in Fort Myers. In fact, I have a friend who works in TV down there at Fort Myers. And his TV station got evacuated this morning after flooding last night in the storm surge. Their studio completely flooded out. Their newsroom, anything that was on the first floor in that building completely flooded out. And it's evident, when it strikes the TV station, when it strikes the thing that everybody's watching from a distance, that, this touched everybody there in Florida. Not just, Fort Myers, but up, and we looked at that swath of rain. Anybody that got over a foot of rain, it touched them. It's touching people now in Daytona, Jacksonville. So even though it's only a tropical storm now, we saw those live cameras. It's still doing a number down there. We're still looking at storm surge in St. Augustine, in Daytona. I suspect there's a lot of power outages because our cameras are down. So like Daytona Beach, I suspect I can't pull up that camera because the power's out there. Not because something has happened to that camera, but because the power's out. Same with Jax Beach, Jacksonville Beach. I can't pull up the camera there right now, and I suspect that's because the power is out down there. So that's what we've got going on. Through the day today, we're going to be watching to see where in the exact cone Ian ends up going. Notice it started taking more of a northward turn there. Does that keep on? Does it go like that? Does it go, continue this path like that? Those very minute differences will make a difference for us here in central Georgia. So the fact that it's made this like northern turn here, but the cone's still pulling it this way, I've got questions about. So we'll see. But that is the latest here as of the 8 a.m. advisory. So with that, we're coming up on 9:25. A reminder to follow along. You can find me on social media. Search at @AForbesWX, at @AForbesWX, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can get the latest information. I've got to run into a news meeting here at 9:30, talk about what's going to go on here in central Georgia with our news team. And, of course, keep it here on 13WMAZ for updates. We've got the live streaming radar model, spaghetti model, cone loop. You can find that on the YouTube page, and we'll be watching this right along with you. All right, everyone. Thank you for watching. Have a great Thursday.